Donald Trump surprises Barron Trump's classmates. What happens next is pure gold fiction story. It was an ordinary morning at Midtown Preparatory Academy, the exclusive private school where Barron Trump attended classes. The stately red brick buildings and pristine lawns reflected the school's reputation for excellence. But despite the air of privilege, the social dynamics inside weren't much different from any other high school. Cliques formed, rumors spread, and unspoken hierarchies dictated much of the students' behavior. Barron Trump walked through the crowded hallways with his usual quiet composure. At 16, he was tall and striking, his reserved demeanor often mistaken for arrogance. Most of his classmates kept their distance, either intimidated by his last name or unsure of how to approach him. This suited Barron just fine. He preferred to stay under the radar, focusing on his studies rather than getting caught up in the school's petty dramas. But not everyone respected his choice to keep to himself. Among the students, a few took pleasure in mocking him, eager to exploit his high-profile family as a source of entertainment. Chief among them was Tyler Jenkins, a senior who thrived on attention. Tyler was the kind of student who turned every room into his stage, his loud voice and biting sarcasm drawing a crowd wherever he went. For weeks, Tyler had been targeting Barron with his jokes and snide remarks. It started with casual comments in class. "Hey, Barron, is your dad building us a new cafeteria?" And escalated to outright taunts in the cafeteria. Barron, however, never reacted. He remained stoic, refusing to give Tyler the satisfaction of a response. But Tyler was persistent. His need for an audience drove him to push further, each joke more cutting than the last. It wasn't just about Barron anymore. It was about proving to everyone that even the son of a former president wasn't untouchable. The latest incident had occurred just the day before. During lunch, Tyler had loudly speculated whether Barron's father had paid for the school's new science lab, adding, "Maybe that's why he can't afford to sit with the rest of us." The cafeteria erupted in laughter, and even some of the teachers looked uncomfortable. Barron had remained silent, but his hands tightened into fists under the table. This morning, as Barron entered his first class, he could feel the tension in the air. Tyler was already there, sitting in the back with his usual entourage. The moment Barron walked in, Tyler smirked and leaned over to whisper something to his friends. They erupted into laughter, glancing in Barron's direction. Barron ignored them, taking his seat at the front of the classroom. He opened his notebook and began reviewing his notes, tuning out the low murmurs behind him. But Tyler wasn't done. As the teacher called the class to order, Tyler leaned back in his chair, his voice just loud enough to be heard. "Hey, Mr. Cartwright," Tyler called out. "Are we going to talk about the new fundraising campaign? I'm sure Barron's dad could cover it in one check. Or maybe he'll just send us another one of his hats." A few students snickered, but most remained silent, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Even Tyler's friends seemed hesitant, glancing between him and Barron as if anticipating a reaction. But Barron didn't look up. He continued writing in his notebook, his expression unreadable. The teacher frowned but didn't address Tyler directly. Instead, he cleared his throat and began the lesson, hoping to move past the awkward moment. But Tyler wasn't satisfied. Throughout the class, he continued to make whispered comments, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Barron remained focused, his calm demeanor unshaken. But inside, he was bracing himself. Tyler's taunts were becoming more aggressive, and it was only a matter of time before he pushed too far. Barron wasn't afraid of confrontation, but he also knew the weight of his family name. Any reaction from him would be scrutinized, twisted, and possibly turned into headlines. As the bell rang and students began gathering their things, Tyler made his move. He stood up and walked to the front of the classroom, blocking Barron's path. "Hey, Barron," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're coming to the assembly later, right? I heard your dad might be the keynote speaker." "Oh wait, he's probably too busy tweeting about how great he is." The room fell silent, all eyes on Barron. For a moment, it seemed as though he might respond. He met Tyler's gaze, his blue eyes steady and unyielding. But instead of speaking, he simply stepped around Tyler and left the classroom, his shoulders square and his stride deliberate. Behind him, he could hear Tyler's voice, taunting and mocking as always. But Barron didn't stop. He knew that Tyler's need for attention was insatiable, and reacting now would only fuel his ego. Still, he couldn't deny the frustration simmering beneath the surface. He had dealt with bullies before, but Tyler's persistence was testing the limits of his patience. As Barron walked through the halls, he considered his next move. He wasn't one to involve his family in his personal matters, but Tyler's constant harassment was beginning to interfere with his ability to focus. And deep down, Barron knew that if this continued, it would only escalate further. Unbeknownst to Barron, however, events were already in motion that would change the dynamic entirely. Tyler's reign of mockery was about to be challenged in a way no one could have anticipated. And when the truth was revealed, the entire school would be left stunned. The air in the school felt heavier as the day went on. Whispers about Tyler's antics and Barron's stoic reaction spread like wildfire. The students were divided. Some admired Barron's composure, while others sided with Tyler, drawn to his charismatic yet toxic bravado. For Tyler, the lack of retaliation only fueled his determination to break Barron's resolve. He thrived on dominance, and Barron's silence was a challenge he couldn't ignore. By lunchtime, the cafeteria was buzzing with activity. Tyler, seated at the center of his usual table, was surrounded by his entourage. His loud voice carried across the room as he recounted the morning's events to anyone who would listen. "Did you see his face?" Tyler crowed, gesturing dramatically. "He looked like a statue. No emotion. Maybe he's a robot, Daddy's little creation. I mean, it makes sense, right? Someone has to keep the family running." The table erupted into laughter, but a few of Tyler's friends exchanged uneasy glances. They were starting to sense that Tyler's obsession with Barron was going too far, but none of them had the courage to speak up. Tyler's magnetic personality kept them tethered to him, even when his behavior crossed the line. Meanwhile, Barron sat at his usual table in the corner, his lunch untouched. He could hear snippets of Tyler's voice above the din of the cafeteria, but he refused to let it distract him. Instead, he focused on the book in front of him, immersing himself in the words as a way to block out the noise. But Tyler wasn't satisfied with staying at his table. Emboldened by the attention, he decided to take things up a notch. He stood, grabbed his tray, and began walking toward Barron's table. His friends fell silent, watching with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. "Hey, Trump," Tyler called out, his voice cutting through the noise. The cafeteria grew quieter as students turned to watch the confrontation unfold. "Why don't you join us? We've got a seat right up front. Or are you too important to mingle with us common folk?" Barron looked up from his book, his expression calm but sharp. He didn't respond, instead returning his gaze to the page in front of him. Tyler smirked, setting his tray down on Barron's table and sliding into the seat across from him. "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue? Or are you just waiting for Daddy to tell you what to say?" The cafeteria was silent now, all eyes on the two boys. Even the teachers in the room seemed hesitant to intervene, unsure of how to handle the escalating tension. Barron closed his book slowly and set it aside. He met Tyler's gaze, his blue eyes steady and unflinching. "Do you ever get tired of hearing your own voice, Tyler?" he asked, his tone even. A ripple of laughter spread through the cafeteria, catching Tyler off guard. His smirk faltered for a split second before he recovered, leaning back in his chair. "Not when I'm this entertaining," Tyler shot back. "But you wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Always so serious. Lighten up, Trump. Life's too short to be boring." Barron didn't take the bait. He leaned forward slightly, his voice low but firm. "Is this what you need to feel important? Making jokes at someone else's expense?" Tyler's grin widened, though there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "Hey, if the shoe fits," he said. "And let's face it, you make it too easy." Barron's gaze didn't waver. "Then I feel sorry for you." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The cafeteria was so quiet now that you could hear the faint hum of the vending machines. Tyler's confident facade cracked, and for a moment, he looked genuinely shaken. but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "Oh, don't feel sorry for me," Tyler said, his voice tinged with anger. "I'm not the one hiding behind a famous name." The tension in the room was palpable, but Barron didn't flinch. "You're hiding too, Tyler," he said. "Behind your jokes, your friends, and your need to tear people down. It's all just a mask, isn't it?" The cafeteria erupted into murmurs, students whispering to each other as they processed Barron's words. Tyler's face turned red, his fists clenching under the table. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, one of his friends spoke up. "Maybe we should drop it, Tyler," the boy said hesitantly. "This is getting—" "Stay out of it," Tyler snapped, cutting him off. The boy shrank back, clearly regretting his decision to speak. Barron stood, picking up his tray and book. He looked down at Tyler, his expression calm but resolute. "You should think about what you're trying to prove," he said quietly, "because right now it's not working." With that, he walked away, his steps measured and deliberate. The cafeteria remained silent as he left, the students unsure of what to say or do. Tyler sat frozen in his seat, his jaw tight and his eyes fixed on the spot where Barron had stood. But Tyler wasn't done. If anything, Barron's refusal to back down only made him more determined to escalate the situation. He couldn't stand the thought of being challenged, let alone in front of an audience. Barron had struck a nerve, and Tyler's need to regain control was consuming him. That afternoon, as Barron returned to his locker between classes, he found another gift waiting for him. A crude drawing of his father, complete with exaggerated features and mocking captions, had been taped to the locker door. Beneath it was a note that read, "Like father, like son." Barron stared at the drawing for a moment, his expression unreadable. Students lingered nearby, watching to see how he would react. But instead of tearing it down or showing any sign of anger, Barron calmly removed the paper, folded it neatly, and placed it in his backpack. His lack of reaction only added to the tension, leaving the onlookers unsure of what to expect next. Tyler, watching from a distance, clenched his fists. His attempts to humiliate Barron had failed again, and the frustration was evident on his face. But instead of deterring him, it only fueled his desire to break Barron's composure once and for all. The stage was set for an even bigger confrontation, one that would test both boys in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The next day, the school buzzed with whispers as students speculated about what would happen next. Tyler's failed attempts to humiliate Barron had become a spectacle, and while some admired Barron's composure, others were eager for the next dramatic chapter. For Tyler, the attention was both a blessing and a curse. His antics had made him the center of attention, but his inability to crack Barron's calm demeanor was starting to erode his image as the untouchable class clown. He needed to go bigger, bolder. By third period, Tyler had hatched a new plan. This time, it wouldn't just be about embarrassing Barron, it would be about pushing him to his limits. Tyler's reputation was on the line, and he was determined to come out on top. The opportunity came during gym class. The students were split into teams for a game of dodgeball, and as luck would have it, Tyler and Barron ended up on opposing sides. Tyler's grin widened as he realized this was his chance. The gym was a natural stage, with its echoing walls and rows of spectators on the bleachers. Here, Tyler could put on a show. As the game began, Tyler made his intentions clear. He ignored the other players, focusing all his energy on Barron. Every time a ball came his way, Tyler hurled it at Barron with unnecessary force, his smirk growing wider with each near miss. The other students quickly picked up on what was happening, and soon, all eyes were on the two boys. "Come on, Trump," Tyler taunted, his voice ringing through the gym. "Show us what you've got. Or are you too good for this game too?" Barron dodged the balls with precision, his movements fluid and controlled. He didn't respond to Tyler's taunts, but his silence only seemed to provoke Tyler further. With each failed attempt to hit Barron, Tyler's frustration grew, his throws becoming wilder and more aggressive. Finally, Tyler saw his chance. A ball bounced into his hands, and Barron, momentarily distracted by another player, turned his back. Tyler wound up and launched the ball with all his strength. aiming directly for Barron's head. The ball struck Barron hard, the impact echoing through the gym. A collective gasp went up from the students as Barron stumbled forward, catching himself before he fell. He straightened slowly, his face calm but his jaw tight. The room was silent, everyone waiting to see how he would react. Tyler's laughter broke the tension. "Bullseye!" he crowed, throwing his arms in the air like a victorious athlete. His cronies joined in, their laughter filling the gym as they high-fived Tyler. "Guess even Trump's not invincible." Barron turned to face Tyler, his expression unreadable. He walked toward him, his steps measured and deliberate, until he was standing just a few feet away. The gym was so quiet now that the sound of Barron's sneakers against the floor seemed deafening. "That's enough, Tyler," Barron said, his voice low but firm. "You've made your point." Tyler's grin faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered, crossing his arms. "What's the matter? Can't handle a little dodgeball?" Barron's gaze didn't waver. "This isn't about dodgeball, and you know it. You're trying to prove something, but all you're doing is making yourself look smaller." The students in the gym exchanged glances, murmurs rippling through the crowd. Tyler's smirk faded completely, replaced by a flash of anger. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You think you're better than me," Tyler hissed, "just because of who your dad is. But guess what, Trump? Nobody here cares about your name. You're just another spoiled kid trying to act like you're above it all." Barron's eyes narrowed slightly, but he remained composed. "You're right," he said. "My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm not afraid of you." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Tyler stared at Barron, his fists clenched, as if considering his next move. But before he could act, the gym teacher blew the whistle, breaking the tension. "All right, that's enough," the teacher barked, striding toward the boys. "Tyler, Barron, back to your teams. Now!" Barron stepped back, his calm demeanor intact, and returned to his spot on the court. Tyler hesitated, his jaw tight, before finally following suit. The game resumed, but the mood in the gym had shifted. The other students played half-heartedly, their attention still fixed on Tyler and Barron. By the end of the class, Tyler's frustration had reached a boiling point. He stormed out of the gym, his friends trailing behind him like shadows. Barron, however, took his time, changing out of his gym clothes and collecting his things without hurry. He knew Tyler wasn't done, but he wasn't worried. He had faced worse before, and he wasn't about to let Tyler win. As Barron walked to his next class, he noticed something unusual. A small group of students had gathered near his locker, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. When Barron approached, they parted to let him through, revealing the latest gift from Tyler. A large poster had been taped to Barron's locker, featuring an exaggerated caricature of his father with the words, "Like father, like loser." Below it was a series of fake tweets, mocking both Barron and his family in crude juvenile language. Barron stared at the poster for a moment, his face betraying no emotion. The students around him waited, their eyes darting between him and the poster, wondering how he would react. Slowly, Barron reached up and removed the poster, folding it neatly and placing it in his bag. He turned to the students, his voice calm but firm. "Don't waste your time with this," he said. "It's not worth it." The crowd dispersed reluctantly, murmurs filling the hallway as they moved on. Barron closed his locker and walked to class, his steps steady and deliberate. Tyler's attempts to provoke him had failed again, but Barron knew the stakes were only going to get higher. Somewhere in the back of his mind, Barron could feel the storm building. Tyler's desperation to win this battle was reaching dangerous levels, and it was only a matter of time before he went too far. Barron braced himself, knowing that the final confrontation was inevitable. The following morning, the tension in Midtown Preparatory Academy was impossible to ignore. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, as if the entire school was waiting for the next act in the ongoing battle between Barron Trump and Tyler Jenkins. Students lingered in the hallways longer than usual, their whispers carrying stories of Tyler's latest schemes and Barron's unshakable composure. For Tyler, this wasn't just about bullying anymore, it was about regaining control. Barron's calm defiance had undermined Tyler's authority, making him look foolish in front of his peers. His bruised ego demanded satisfaction, and Tyler was determined to deliver the final blow. By lunchtime, Tyler had devised his most elaborate plan yet. He and his friends had spent the morning preparing for what they believed would be Barron's ultimate humiliation. The cafeteria, packed as usual, was the perfect stage for Tyler's performance. The buzz of conversation filled the air as students ate, laughed, and exchanged gossip, oblivious to the storm brewing in the corner. Barron entered the cafeteria with his usual measured stride, his tall frame cutting an imposing figure despite his quiet demeanor. He carried his lunch tray to his usual table in the far corner, ignoring the curious glances and whispered comments that followed him. Sitting down, he opened his book and began reading, blocking out the noise around him. Across the room, Tyler watched, his smirk widening. He nudged his friends, signaling that it was time. With exaggerated confidence, he stood up, holding a small box in his hands. His voice boomed across the cafeteria, instantly silencing the chatter. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tyler announced, climbing onto one of the tables. "I have a special presentation for you today. A little something to honor our very own VIP Barron Trump." The room erupted into laughter and murmurs as students turned to watch. Barron looked up from his book, his expression calm but alert. He could feel every eye on him, the weight of their anticipation pressing down like a storm cloud. Tyler opened the box with a flourish, revealing a bright red "Make America Great Again" hat and a toy microphone. "Since Barron here is too shy to give us a speech," Tyler continued, "I thought I'd help him out. After all, what's a Trump without a stage?" The laughter grew louder as Tyler placed the hat on his head and grabbed the microphone. Mocking Barron's reserved demeanor, he began pacing the table, gesturing theatrically as he pretended to deliver a campaign speech. "My fellow students," Tyler proclaimed in an exaggerated voice, "today, we honor the great legacy of the Trump family. From gold-plated penthouses to reality TV. They've shown us that being rich is all you need to succeed." The cafeteria erupted into cheers and jeers, the crowd eating up Tyler's performance. Even some of the teachers in the room hesitated to intervene, unsure of how to handle the situation without escalating it further. Through it all, Barron remained seated, his eyes fixed on Tyler. He didn't flinch, didn't look away. His calm gaze was a stark contrast to the chaos around him, and it only seemed to fuel Tyler's determination. Tyler jumped down from the table, walking toward Barron with the hat and microphone still in hand. The crowd followed his every move, their laughter and cheers growing louder with each step. Tyler stopped in front of Barron's table, leaning down to meet his gaze. "Come on, Barron," Tyler said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Why don't you join the fun? Show us what you've got. Or are you too scared?" The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. All eyes were on Barron, waiting to see how he would respond. For a moment, he said nothing, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he stood, his tall frame towering over Tyler. "You done?" Barron asked, his voice low but steady. Tyler blinked, caught off guard by the simplicity of the question. "What's the matter?" he sneered, recovering quickly. "Too good to join in?" Barron stepped closer, his calm demeanor unshaken. "What's your point, Tyler? That I don't belong here? That I'm different from you?" The cafeteria was so quiet now that you could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning. Tyler opened his mouth to respond, but Barron didn't give him the chance. "We both know why you're doing this," Barron continued, his voice firm but composed. "You need everyone here to laugh at me because you're afraid they'll stop looking at you. That's the real joke, Tyler, not me. You." The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler's smirk faltered, his confidence wavering under Barron's unwavering gaze. Around them, the students exchanged stunned glances, their expressions a mixture of shock and awe. But Tyler wasn't ready to back down. His ego wouldn't let him. With a sneer, he shoved the toy microphone into Barron's chest, forcing him to take it. "Fine," Tyler snapped. "If you've got so much to say, let's hear it." Barron looked down at the microphone in his hand, then back at Tyler. For a moment, the room held its breath. Then, to everyone's surprise, Barron stepped onto the table, his tall figure commanding attention as he turned to face the crowd. "I'm not here to entertain you," Barron said, his voice clear and steady. "I'm not here to defend myself either, because the truth is I don't need to. Tyler can say whatever he wants about me, but it doesn't change who I am. And it doesn't change the fact that this," he gestured around the room, "isn't about me, it's about him." The students watched in stunned silence as Barron continued, his calm confidence filling the room. "He needs you to laugh at me because it makes him feel powerful. But real power doesn't come from tearing people down. It comes from knowing who you are and standing tall, no matter what." Barron stepped down from the table, handing the microphone back to Tyler. "So if you want to keep trying to break me, go ahead. But I won't break, and I won't walk away." With that, he returned to his seat, picking up his book as if nothing had happened. The cafeteria remained silent for a long moment, the students exchanging wide-eyed glances. Tyler stood frozen, the microphone dangling in his hand, his face a mixture of anger and humiliation. As the whispers began to spread, Tyler realized that he had lost control of the situation. His attempts to humiliate Barron had only backfired, turning the crowd's admiration toward the very person he had tried to tear down. But Tyler wasn't finished. His bruised ego demanded vengeance, and he was willing to go to even greater lengths to get it. The aftermath of the cafeteria incident rippled through Midtown Preparatory Academy like a shockwave. By the next day, Barron Trump's composed response to Tyler Jenkins's antics was all anyone could talk about. Students whispered about it in hallways, replayed the scene in their minds, and shared their thoughts in quiet groups. For many, it was a moment of revelation. Barron's strength wasn't just in his name, but in his unshakable presence. But for Tyler, it was the final straw. Tyler sat in the back of his first period class, his jaw clenched as he scrolled through his phone. His friends had recorded the cafeteria incident, and while most of the comments on the shared video were supportive of Barron, a few were mocking Tyler for losing control. "Did you see his face?" one comment read. "Tyler got schooled, and Barron didn't even break a sweat. Guess the class clown met his match," said another. Tyler's blood boiled as he read the words. He slammed his phone down on the desk, his fists tightening. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. He was the one people laughed with, not at. He was the one who controlled the room, who held the power. But Barron had flipped the script, and Tyler wasn't going to let it stand. As the morning progressed, Tyler's frustration festered into a new plan. This time, he wasn't going to rely on cheap stunts or public humiliation. He was going to strike where it hurt Barron's identity, his family, the very foundation of his calm confidence. By lunchtime, Tyler had enlisted a few of his more loyal friends to help execute his plan. Together, they set up a makeshift newsroom in the middle of the cafeteria, complete with a fake podium and a projector. On the screen behind the podium was a large, doctored image of Barron's father, Donald Trump, holding a baby with Barron's face edited onto it. The caption read, "Still riding Daddy's coattails?" As students filed into the cafeteria, they paused to take in the spectacle. Some laughed uncomfortably, while others exchanged nervous glances. The room buzzed with murmurs as everyone realized that Tyler was about to launch his most personal attack yet. Barron entered the cafeteria a few minutes later, his steps deliberate and his face unreadable. He immediately noticed the setup, his sharp eyes scanning the room and landing on Tyler, who was already at the podium, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tyler began, his voice dripping with mock enthusiasm. "Today, we honor the great Barron Trump, heir to the Trump Empire and champion of silence. Give it up for him, everyone." A smattering of awkward applause and laughter rippled through the room. Barron stood still, watching Tyler with an intensity that made even some of Tyler's friends uncomfortable. "But wait," Tyler continued, his grin widening. "Who is Barron Trump, really? Is he just a quiet guy trying to blend in? Or is there more to his story? Let's find out together, shall we?" The projector screen flickered, displaying a series of photos of Barron with his father at various public events. Tyler clicked through them rapidly, each one accompanied by sarcastic commentary. Here we have Barron at a rally, probably writing his homework while Dad talks about walls. And here at a press conference, because what kid doesn't spend their weekends with reporters? The crowd laughed uneasily, unsure of how far Tyler was willing to go. Barron stepped forward, his tall frame cutting through the crowd like a knife. He didn't stop until he was standing a few feet from Tyler, his expression calm but his eyes blazing. "Do you really think this is a good idea, Tyler?" Barron asked, his voice steady but carrying an edge. Tyler smirked, gesturing to the screen. "Oh, come on, Barron. I'm just giving everyone a little history lesson. Nothing wrong with that, right?" Barron didn't flinch. "It's not history if it's made up." Tyler leaned forward, his smirk turning into a sneer. "Made up? Oh, I think it's pretty clear who you are. You're just a spoiled kid hiding behind Daddy's name. Without it, you're nothing." The crowd fell silent, the tension in the room palpable. But Barron didn't back down. He stepped closer to the podium, his voice calm but firm. "You really want to talk about who I am, Tyler? Fine, let's talk." He turned to face the crowd, his gaze sweeping over the students, teachers, and even the lunch staff who had paused their work to watch. "I didn't want to bring this up," Barron began, his voice steady, "because I didn't think it mattered. But since Tyler is so desperate to make my life his business, let me clarify a few things." The room held its breath as Barron continued. "Yes, my father is Donald Trump. Yes, my family has power and influence. But that doesn't define who I am. What defines me is what I do, how I handle myself, and how I treat others, even people like Tyler." Tyler opened his mouth to respond, but Barron raised a hand, cutting him off. "Let me finish," Barron said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "You think I hide behind my father's name, but the truth is, I've been working to build my own legacy. What you don't know, Tyler, what none of you know, is that I've been managing several projects for my father's organization. The science lab renovation this school just got, that wasn't just funded by my family. I planned it. I organized it. I made it happen." Gasps rippled through the crowd, the weight of Barron's words sinking in. Even Tyler's friends looked shocked, their confidence in their leader visibly shaken. Barron stepped even closer to Tyler, his voice lowering but gaining an edge. "So, Tyler, if you want to keep trying to bring me down, go ahead. But remember this, you're not fighting me. You're fighting someone who has built more in 16 years than you probably will in a lifetime." The silence was deafening. Tyler's smirk had vanished, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. For the first time, he had no snide comment, no sarcastic retort. The power dynamic had shifted completely, and everyone in the room could feel it. Barron stepped back, his gaze sweeping over the crowd one last time. "This is the last time I'll address this," he said, his voice steady. "From now on, let's focus on what really matters, being better than this." With that, Barron turned and walked back to his table, his composure intact. The cafeteria was silent for a long moment before the murmurs began again, students whispering and exchanging wide-eyed glances. Tyler stood frozen at the podium, the microphone still in his hand. His plan had backfired spectacularly, leaving him exposed and humiliated in front of the entire school. But deep down, Barron knew this wasn't over. Tyler's ego wouldn't let him walk away without one last attempt to reclaim control, and Barron would be ready. Tyler's face was a mask of barely concealed fury as he stepped down from the makeshift podium. The laughter, the whispers, the stunned faces of his classmates. It all felt like a dagger twisting in his pride. Barron's revelation had turned the tables in a way Tyler hadn't anticipated. He wasn't just losing the crowd. He was losing the control he'd carefully cultivated over years of being the center of attention. As the lunch period ended, Tyler's friends trailed behind him awkwardly, their loyalty visibly wavering. They exchanged nervous glances, but none of them dared to address the growing tension. Tyler, however, was seething. His humiliation had boiled into a toxic determination. If Barron wouldn't break under pressure, Tyler would force him to. After school, Tyler called a meeting with his closest allies in the back corner of the library. He leaned forward over the table, his voice low but charged with intensity. "We're not done," he hissed, his fists clenched. "That stunt in the cafeteria? That was nothing. He thinks he can make me look weak in front of everyone? We'll see who's weak when I'm through with him." One of his friends, a lanky boy named Mason, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Tyler, don't you think maybe it's time to let this go? I mean, you saw how everyone reacted." "He's not backing down." Tyler glared at Mason, his eyes narrowing. "So what? You're scared of him now too? He's just a kid hiding behind his dad's money. He's nothing without that." Another friend, Carla, hesitated before speaking. "But what if he's not hiding, Tyler? I mean, he practically runs half the projects in this school. Maybe we're underestimating him." Tyler slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. "Underestimating him? He's the one underestimating me, and I'm going to make sure he never forgets it." The others exchanged uneasy glances but ultimately nodded. They had followed Tyler for so long that defying him felt impossible, even as doubt crept into their minds. The next day, Tyler launched his most audacious plan yet. He had spent the night crafting an elaborate smear campaign, complete with doctored screenshots of fake messages and out-of-context photos meant to paint Barron as a spoiled, entitled elitist. The evidence was designed to spread like wildfire, appealing to the curiosity and gossip culture that thrived in the school. By the time Barron arrived, the rumors were already circulating. Groups of students huddled in the hallways, their eyes darting toward him as they whispered. Some held their phones, scrolling through Tyler's fabricated posts with expressions of shock or amusement. Others looked uncomfortable, unsure of whether to believe the stories or dismiss them as yet another of Tyler's schemes. Barron felt the shift immediately. He could see the wariness in his classmates' eyes, the hesitation in their greetings. It didn't take long for him to discover the source of the rumors. A few students approached him, showing him the posts and asking if they were true. Barron's jaw tightened as he read the lies Tyler had spread, but his calm demeanor didn't falter. At lunch, Tyler sat at his usual table, basking in the attention as students approached him to discuss the latest revelations. He feigned humility, shrugging off their praise. "I'm just telling the truth," he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "People deserve to know who he really is." Across the cafeteria, Barron sat alone, the weight of the rumors pressing down on him. But instead of retreating or lashing out, he began crafting a plan of his own. He knew Tyler's lies wouldn't hold up under scrutiny, and the best way to expose them was through action, not words. As the week went on, Barron quietly began gathering evidence to counter Tyler's claims. He reached out to teachers, administrators, and even students who had worked on the school projects he had spearheaded. Each conversation provided him with testimonials, records, and documentation that painted a clear picture of his contributions. By Friday, Barron was ready. That afternoon, during the school assembly, Barron approached the principal with a request. He asked for a brief moment to address the student body, a chance to set the record straight. The principal, who had been following the situation closely, agreed. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation as the students filed in. Tyler sat near the front, his arms crossed and a smug grin on his face. He was confident that whatever Barron had planned wouldn't be enough to undo the damage he had caused. But when Barron took the stage, the atmosphere shifted. Dressed sharply and standing tall, he exuded quiet confidence as he approached the microphone. The murmurs in the audience died down as he began to speak. "Over the past few days, a lot of things have been said about me," Barron began, his voice steady. "Some of them are true, most of them aren't. And while I could stand here and deny the lies, I think it's more important to show you the truth." The screen behind him lit up, displaying photos, emails, and records that detailed his work on various school projects. One by one, Barron presented his evidence, calmly and methodically dismantling each of Tyler's claims. He didn't attack or accuse. He simply laid out the facts, allowing the truth to speak for itself. By the time he finished, the room was silent. The students, who had been eager to believe Tyler's narrative, now looked at him with doubt and even disdain. Tyler's friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their loyalty visibly wavering. Barron stepped away from the microphone, his gaze sweeping over the audience. "I didn't do any of this to prove a point or to win an argument," he said. "I did it because I believe that actions speak louder than words. And I hope my actions show you who I really am." As he left the stage, the students erupted into applause. Tyler sat frozen, his face pale and his fists clenched. He had been exposed, not by insults or retaliation, but by the undeniable truth. Yet, instead of backing down, Tyler's mind churned with plans for one final, desperate move. The applause from the assembly echoed through the halls long after the students returned to their classrooms. Barron's calm, factual presentation had left a profound impact on the student body. For many, it wasn't just about the revelations regarding the school projects. It was about the way Barron had handled himself throughout. He hadn't attacked or demeaned Tyler. He had simply let the truth dismantle every false narrative. But Tyler wasn't finished. While his friends and followers began to distance themselves, muttering excuses and avoiding eye contact, Tyler sat alone in the cafeteria later that day, his jaw clenched and his mind racing. The smug confidence he had always worn like armor was gone, replaced by a simmering mix of humiliation and rage. His failure to break Barron had exposed cracks in the carefully crafted image he had built for himself. He replayed the assembly in his mind, each piece of evidence Barron had presented like a nail in the coffin of his reputation. Students who had once laughed at Tyler's jokes now looked at him with pity or contempt. His friends' loyalty, once unwavering, had evaporated in the face of Barron's truth. And yet, Tyler couldn't let it go. He couldn't accept that he had been outdone, outclassed, and outsmarted by the one person he had spent so much effort trying to destroy. "I'll fix this," Tyler muttered to himself, gripping his phone tightly. He began scrolling through his contacts, searching for anyone who might still be willing to stand by him. He sent out a flurry of texts, summoning his remaining allies for an emergency meeting after school. He was determined to salvage what was left of his reputation, or at least take Barron down with him. That afternoon, Tyler and his dwindling group of supporters gathered in the back corner of the library. The mood was tense, the once boisterous group now subdued and hesitant. Tyler's desperation was palpable, his eyes darting around the room as he outlined his plan. "We're not going to let him win," Tyler said, his voice low but intense. "He might have turned the school against me, but that doesn't mean he's untouchable. There's always a way to get back on top." Mason, who had been one of Tyler's closest allies, frowned. "Tyler, don't you think this is getting out of hand? I mean, he didn't even attack you. He just showed the truth." "That's exactly why we need to hit back," Tyler snapped, his eyes flashing. "He's making me look weak, and I'm not going to let that stand." "But what's the point?" Carla interjected, her voice hesitant. "Everyone knows the truth now. If you keep pushing, it's only going to make things worse." Tyler glared at her, his frustration boiling over. "If you're too scared to help, then leave. I don't need cowards." Carla exchanged a glance with Mason, and after a moment of silence, she stood and walked away. Mason hesitated but ultimately followed, leaving Tyler with only two others, loyal but uncertain. The room felt emptier, the cracks in Tyler's influence widening. Tyler clenched his fists, his mind racing. He couldn't shake the image of Barron standing on that stage, calm and composed, while he sat humiliated in front of the entire school. It wasn't just about reputation anymore, it was personal. The next morning, Tyler arrived at school early, determined to execute his plan. This time, he aimed to make the humiliation public and undeniable. He spent the morning plastering crude posters around the school, each one featuring doctored images of Barron with captions like, "Daddy's boy can't fight his own battles," and "All talk, no action." When students arrived, the posters caused a stir. Some laughed nervously, unsure of how to react, while others tore them down, disgusted by the lengths Tyler was willing to go. Barron arrived shortly after, his usual calm demeanor unshaken. He walked past the posters without a glance, his focus unbroken as he made his way to his first class. By lunchtime, Tyler was waiting in the cafeteria, hoping for a reaction. But when Barron entered, he simply went to his usual table, sat down, and opened his book. The lack of response only fueled Tyler's frustration. "Hey, Trump!" Tyler shouted, standing up and pointing at Barron. "What's the matter? No clever speeches today? Or are you finally out of things to say?" The cafeteria fell silent, all eyes on Barron. He looked up from his book, his gaze steady as he met Tyler's glare. Slowly, he stood, his tall frame towering over the crowd. "I'm not going to play your game, Tyler," Barron said, his voice calm but firm. "You can shout all you want, but it won't change the truth. It won't change who I am. And it won't change the fact that everyone here sees you for what you really are." Tyler's face turned red, his fists clenching at his sides. "And what's that supposed to mean?" he snapped, his voice shaking. Barron took a step closer, his voice low but powerful. "It means you're afraid. Afraid of losing control. Afraid of being forgotten. And that's why you keep doing this, because you think if you're loud enough, people will forget how small you really feel." The cafeteria was silent, the weight of Barron's words hanging heavy in the air. Tyler opened his mouth to respond but found no words. For the first time, he was truly speechless, his usual bravado crumbling under the scrutiny of the crowd. Barron stepped back, his composure intact. "I'm done entertaining you, Tyler," he said. "If you want to spend your time trying to tear me down, that's your choice. But I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not backing down." With that, Barron returned to his seat, picking up his book as if nothing had happened. The students watched in stunned silence before slowly turning their attention back to their lunches. Tyler stood frozen in place, his humiliation complete but his stubborn pride refusing to let him admit defeat. As the crowd dispersed, Tyler's remaining supporters quietly slipped away, leaving him alone. For the first time, he felt the full weight of his actions, the emptiness of his victories, and the fragility of the power he had built on fear and intimidation. But even as his world crumbled, Tyler's mind churned with thoughts of revenge, unable to let go of the need to reclaim control. Today's story dives into the complexities of resilience, the consequences of unchecked ego, and what happens when courage meets desperation. At the center of it all is Barron Trump, a young man who faced relentless provocation yet refused to waver, demonstrating that true strength isn't about overpowering others but standing firm in who you are. Let's take a moment to reflect. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to tear you down? Maybe it was a bully, a coworker, or even a so-called friend. That moment when their words or actions cut deep, trying to make you question your worth? Now imagine that happening in front of an audience, day after day, with someone like Tyler, a manipulative antagonist determined to break you, pushing harder each time. And isn't that a lesson for all of us? Think about it. How many times do we let someone else's negativity dictate our actions? How often do we get pulled into conflicts that don't deserve our energy? Barron reminds us that sometimes the strongest response is no response at all. Silence, paired with confidence, can be deafening. Let's pause and ask ourselves, how often do we see this play out in real life? Whether it's in schools, workplaces, or even online, there's always someone trying to elevate themselves by tearing others down. But as this story shows, that path doesn't lead to true respect. It leads to isolation. Tyler's supporters began to see through his facade, and one by one, they walked away. Now, here's the part that gives this story its depth. When Barron's secret was revealed, that he was quietly leading major projects and making real contributions to the school, it changed everything. Tyler's entire narrative crumbled under the weight of the truth. But Barron didn't use this revelation to gloat or retaliate. Instead, he let his actions speak louder than words, proving once again that integrity is louder than noise. And that's why this story resonates. It's not just about a young man standing up to a bully. It's about showing that character always wins. When we stay true to who we are, when we refuse to let others define us, we create a ripple effect. Barron's strength inspired others to rethink their actions, to choose respect over ridicule, and to see through the lies. So, as we wrap up, I want to ask you this. What would you do in Barron's position? Would you have the courage to stand tall, to face constant ridicule without breaking? And what about Tyler? How do we deal with people like him in our own lives? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories matter, and they might just inspire someone else to find their own strength. And if you've ever felt like giving up because of someone else's negativity, let this story remind you, you are stronger than you think. Just like Barron, you have the power to rise above, to let the truth shine through, and to show the world who you really are. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. Stay strong, stay kind, and we'll see you in the next one.